Welcome to our Saturday conversation, Saturday Simulcast, I should say, from thanks to the Purdue Union Club Hotel, Boiler Up Bar. They're probably having a drink or two after the Boilermakers 31-24 victory over 21st ranked Illinois. And a big one for Purdue at that. A lot of storylines in this game, guys. Tom, you're indulging us from the Memorial Stadium press box, I assume. And just when you count Purdue out, they come back and reel you back in, as they say. But great win for Jeff Brom's program.
You got that completely wrong, by the way.
Over a ranked opponent on the road.
There's nobody that knows movie quotes better than Brian Neubert. I don't want to get off the rails here off the start, but
I missed it. I know it's a Sopranos line. I apologize, but go ahead.
No, not Sopranos.
No, it's the Godfather. It's Godfather. Is it 2 or 3?
Oh, 2.
You're
when
thinking
he says,
of the impression of Michael Corleone that Silvio Dante does in The Sopranos, which is an exaggerated.
Okay, all right.
Exaggerated mock-up.
And I know my Godfather pretty well, but go ahead, Mr. Dienhart. Answer.
Well,
I tell you, man, what a stunner, right? I picked Purdue to lose, I think 27-25. Coming off the last 2 games, that Wisconsin, Iowa at home, it was looking bleak on many different fronts for Purdue. Aiden O'Connell wasn't sharp. I don't think Jeff Brom using Maccabee enough. The issues in the secondary are well documented, the big plays and whatnot. And the turnovers were sprouting up everywhere as well. And, boy, Purdue got it buttoned up today. I think we talked, guys, maybe you and I, Alan, on Tuesday about how when this team has its back against the wall under Brom, we've seen time and again an ability to respond to adversity, and you got to tip your hat. I always talk about that's how you're defined in life, how you respond to adversity, and Purdue certainly did, guys. You look at the resume of this Illinois defense and what Purdue did from a statistical standpoint was pretty impressive. The 31 points, 379 yards, balance. Maccabee had 100 yards rushing. On and on you can go with the plaudits. They made plays in crunch time. And guys, no play was bigger, right, than what that fourth down pass, I think 4th and 9 to TJ Sheffield to get that last first down to set up the field goal. My goodness. I mean, that's what it's all about. Remember, guys, 2 years ago during that COVID game, they had to have a big, I think, 3rd or 4th down catch from David Bell to ice the game. And then they delivered another big play today to get to bowl eligibility, and then probably more importantly, of course, to stay in the thick of this Big Ten title race, which really could be crazy the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Iowa, Wisconsin going in as we record. Iowa is still ahead. I think if you're a Purdue fan, you want Iowa to win that game because Iowa still has to go to Minnesota, and they both trade games between Minnesota and Nebraska, but Wisconsin's got the better schedule, having to go to Nebraska but having Minnesota at home. But who knows, Brian? How do you summarize, justify, reconcile, whatever term you want to use, what you saw at Purdue today?
Well, I thought that Illinois was bound to come back to earth because I thought I think they've been doing it with smoke and mirrors all year anyway. And I think that the Michigan State game last week was kind of a indicator that, the Emperor was about to show himself to have no clothes. And I thought Purdue played okay today. I didn't think they played their best game, but I think they played the way they've been playing. And, when it's not Iowa and Wisconsin and you're not falling behind with disastrous turnovers. And Purdue was a little bit fortunate in the sense that they let 2 golden scoring opportunities early get away. And also there was an interception that was dropped, and there was an interception that was wiped off by a pass interference call that can be debated if we want to debate it. But I'm sure Purdue
will be debated.
But I think Purdue kind of got through the first half, and then obviously did everything they had to do in the second half. I think this was very similar to the Maryland game, a little bit similar to the Minnesota game in terms of Purdue just being just good enough.
Yeah, no doubt. And certainly Aiden O'Connell, and now a option quarterback, made a couple big plays there, though he reminded me, the only one, I think Tom and you and I talked about, and who would remember this, the 2014 game when the great Austin Appleby ran that option well, and they went at Illinois. I think Appleby's still a better runner than O'Connell, but O'Connell made big plays. And to his credit, I know he's been maligned by some. I know he hasn't though he had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, only 237 yards passing today, but he spread it around enough. And like you said, TJ Sheffield makes a big play. Payne Durham's been making big plays much of the season, but they found him at the right time, and Charlie Jones as well. So, all right, where do we go from here, Tom? I mean, you got Northwestern and Indiana at home, 2 games that you'll be a double-digit favorite, I would think, for next Saturday's game, which I think we'll have a time for that game around 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night. Then, of course, Indiana comes always a tough game. But and the scenario, too, obviously, that you can still get to the Big Ten championship game. But more importantly, it's really a chance to end the season. 8 wins in the regular season looks a heck of a lot better than 7. 8-4 looks better than 7-5, I guess. Is my point.
6-3 right now with the chance to finish. Is that right? No, 6-4 right now with the chance to finish 8-4.
Right.
And, Purdue's obviously got to take care of business. Then I think the winner of Wisconsin-Iowa today loses a subsequent game because Purdue has no tiebreakers against either of those 2 teams. I guess that's a real simple annotated version of maybe what Purdue has to do to get to Indianapolis. Before I turn the page, Alan, Devin Mockabee.
Yeah.
400-yard rushing game. He's not doing this against Indiana State and then Alcorn State and Missouri State. He's done this against Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and now Illinois. A couple of those on the road. 28 carries today. I think that's probably a season high for Mockabee.
It is, yeah.
Catching the ball too. I know he had a drop early on, but man, I tell you what, when Jeff Brom got near the goal line, Mockabee got the ball, and this was a Devin Mockabee kind of a game. And for Purdue to finally have a back of this ilk helped them win the game. Look at Devin Maccabee's counterpart. How much hype did we hear about Chase Brown all week? The nation's #1 rusher. Didn't have 100 yards today, guys. He had 98 yards on 23 carries. Probably the first time he's been under 100 yards this season, I'm guessing.
It has, yeah.
So that was big too, right? And but again, you got to tip your hat to Mockabee. You talked about Aiden O'Connell a little bit, Alan. Bounced back from what had been a rough couple weeks here. Like you said, his numbers weren't glowing, but they needed the balance today in this weather. It was cold. It was a stiff wind. It wasn't as windy as last week in Ross-Ade, but it was still windy coming out of the northwest here across the field. So again, they managed this foul weather game and found a way to win it, which was a nice confidence boost. And Jack Ansell, the punter, you never talk about those guys, but I thought he had a pretty good game too with some of his punts. So there's plenty of backs to pat after a game like this that has everybody smiling again, of course, and all possibilities are back on the table after what had been a pretty dreary, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks here.
Yeah, you go, Brian, you're going to walk into the Northwestern game next week. There are still some tickets left, as we understand that, but it becomes a huge game. I mean, at least in terms of getting where you want and getting to and we'll start to talk about bowl scenarios. That's now that Purdue is bowl eligible. I would argue that, and we'll get to our guru friend Jerry Palm on that probably this week at some point. But you win 8 games. If you get to Indianapolis, you're probably going to do no worse than a good Florida Bowl. If you pull the upset of the century and win the Big Ten championship, you're going to do no worse than the Rose Bowl. I know that that's silly talk. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but okay. I haven't been drinking this afternoon, but I am saying that this is what's ahead for Purdue. And Brian, that scenario with what Jeff Brom, you have to give a lot of credit to the fact that again, getting counted out and they got some calls at the right time today too, and that was helpful. I think that's true as well. But all this ties into a really interesting scenario, and it will be an interesting next few weeks, not only on what goes on in the field, but everything with respect to Purdue football.
Yeah,
that's a question, Brian. That's a statement for you to respond to.
I don't know who counted them out.
Sorry.
I mean, everybody. I thought people were talking about the Big Ten West title before Purdue had even played well. And
yeah.
I thought that was something Purdue still had to earn. I thought they took a step in that direction today. Obviously, I think
no doubt.
That fourth quarter, everybody on down. I think Aiden O'Connell, Aiden O'Connell is not having a great season. Has not had the sort of season I know he probably wanted to have, Purdue wanted him to have. But man, he was good in that fourth quarter. That touchdown throw to Payne Durham was big time.
Oh yeah.
That fourth quarter throw to TJ Sheffield was enormous. And I think quarterbacks are defined, as much by what they do in those winning moments than they are, statistics or whatever else. And I think in those winning moments today, he did the same thing at Syracuse, and then the game got away afterwards. But I think this was kind of a moment for him. I think he had a big fourth quarter. I think the defense had a big fourth quarter after they obviously, as much maligned as that defense has justifiably been, after that first Illinois drive, which was simply a product of the fact that Purdue expected Illinois to run and Illinois threw, and I think that's all it was. I think the defense was pretty good today. I think they were really good in the fourth quarter. I think Jalen Graham came up enormous. That play by Lawrence Johnson where he deflected the ball that Kieran Douglas intercepted, enormous play. You have to give them a lot of credit too.
Yeah, no question. Really, go ahead, Tom.
5 3-and-outs today, and as the offense was sort of sluggish in the first half, the defense kept turning back Illinois when they were leading 7-0. Remember, Illinois kept getting the ball back with that 7-0 lead, and the Purdue defense kept taking them off the field 3-0. And finally, so they were kind of just holding the serve for the offense until O'Connell and company sort of got amped up. And you guys talked about the penalties. Brian had a tweet at one point and said, I'm almost surprised when there's not a penalty on a play. And it certainly seemed like that today, didn't it? 12 penalties for 121 yards on Illinois, 6 for 80 on Purdue. And I think Illinois guys had 5 pass interference calls on them.
I thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 7. I don't know where I got that number.
Maybe I'm wrong.
And Purdue's penalty yardage, I was going to say Purdue's penalty yards, I think they get credited for 50 on the one on the kickoff, right? So
the total stat sheet shows Purdue with 4 penalties for 179 yards for Purdue. So that seemed way off. Maybe I'm
I think it was 70. But whatever it was, and my point is that Purdue's was inflated a little bit because of that kickoff penalty as well. That played into that just a little bit, but yeah, you're right. I thought Purdue got the right calls at the right time, and yet maybe also from the penalty gods, it came back Purdue's way a little bit.
Fans were booing loudly. Believe me, they were very upset on.
Yes, they were.
Calls. You guys probably could decipher that through the TV.
It did go both ways. I thought that there were some. I mean, I thought there were a couple of 50-50 calls that went Purdue's way, and there were a couple. I still don't understand how. On the first down completion inside the red zone, I don't understand how a ball just pops out of a guy's arm like that without any contact, and that's called a completed pass. That just didn't make any sense to me.
Should have been, like you said, Ryan.
They should have met in the middle and called it an incomplete pass. I thought there was a personal foul on Devin Mockabee in the red zone that was obvious that they didn't call, and some of that stuff sort of offsets a lot of what the Illinois people, I'm sure, are very upset about, because there were a lot of flags that went against Illinois.
And I asked Aiden O'Connell after the game about that, and he says they play a lot of man coverage. And when you play man coverage, a lot of times guys can get grabby, and your receivers come back to get the ball, and the defensive back may grab you. So he thought maybe the defense that Illinois is playing is going to lend itself maybe to incurring some of those penalties.
Well, that's been Purdue's deal too all year. They've had so much man-to-man. They've had so many situations with guys on islands.
Yep.
Jamari Brown there, that interception that got wiped off, where the ball would have had to have gone through him to get to the receiver. He was in position to knock that ball down, ended up pushing off so he could intercept the ball, gets called for pass interference. That's what we're talking about here. You got guys just out in space on islands, and you obviously have to be a little bit more aggressive when you're all by yourself out there. You know there's not somebody coming over the top for you. That's just kind of the nature of man-to-man, and that's what Illinois is doing. So that's you're going to be more subject to that sort of penalty than you would be otherwise.
Yeah, Illinois throws for DeVito threw for 201 yards. I don't know whether Purdue changed some things schematically, defensively, also in the secondary. I had a couple of people tweet at me saying that they thought that the football guys had thought that was the case. I don't know. That'd be a good question. But also, yeah, Illinois, at least according to the stat sheet I'm looking at, 12 for 121, Purdue 6 for 80. But again, Purdue had a couple of those on that kickoff assess that tied into that yards. Purdue did not kill itself with penalties, even though 80 is not a small number in penalty yards.
I asked Jeff Brom after the game about the defense. Brian talked earlier in this simulcast about the first drive. It was like hot knife through butter. The defense got things buttoned up, and Jeff Brom talked about it. Branson Dean did too afterward. He says they just really simplified things this week. Got back to basics, make sure guys were getting lined up right. Didn't try to do 100 different things. Don't want guys overthinking things. They want them to be able to play fast and react, and not have to think and process a lot. And there can be a lot to be said for that type of philosophy. So I think maybe that was part of really what maybe helped the defense play better and just play looser and free, guys. And we always talk about big plays. Big plays always win games, and Illinois didn't have a lot of big plays. They had 4 passes of over 15 yards, 3 over 20, and they had 3 runs over 10. Their longest was 18. So remember last week, the 75-yard touchdown run that killed them? Purdue never really got gassed for that big chunk play that resulted in a touchdown, or just many big chunk plays overall. And then that really helped the defense out, made Illinois have to really earn everything it got.
And Purdue got some good pressure on Tommy DeVito as well. And again, the defensive line. And you got to also go back to the offensive line.
Yeah, the O-line.
Doing the job. 2 crucial penalties. Yes, Illinois had lots of PIs, but they also had 2 false starts that were really – one didn't end up hurting them because they got the false start and they threw the touchdown pass, but another one did. Again, give Purdue credit. That hasn't been a factor for Purdue's offensive line very much, if at all, this year. So
that sack by Corday Sidner.
Yeah, and Sidner just continues to make plays. I mean, it's interesting. How about Cole Brevard showed up in a couple of big plays? Branson Dean, I was going to ask you, Tom, any other injuries on the backside? I know that they usually don't know much. Branson Dean came back in the game.
He did.
Chase Brown, of course, for Illinois didn't look good for him. But I was just curious to whether anything else jumped off the page at you from an injury standpoint.
Clyde Washington got helped off the field. I'm not sure if he ever came back. I didn't really look for him again, but nobody I'm aware of, Alan, that I was tracking aside from Dean, but we'll obviously find out more early next week. So at least from this quick view, it looks like they came out pretty much unscathed here as far as any real damage to their key players, at least.
All right, Brian, last word from you on this and putting it into any additional perspective you want to bring.
Yeah, Purdue's got to win these last 2 games now. Because they've put themselves in position to be in position here. And, these are some of the highest stakes games Purdue has played. Obviously the season's not been a straight line for Purdue. If Purdue does end up winning the Big Ten West, it will not be the most aesthetically pleasing championship season known to man. And I don't say that to take anything away from Purdue. I'm just saying that that's kind of the reality of it. But you've got 2 bad teams here coming up. You've got everything to lose. They've got nothing to play for. It's you just have to show up twice and play well and keep getting better. I mean, I know I'm saying that with 2 regular season games left, but I think it continues to be true. Purdue, was great in the second half, but they got away with 3 turnovers in the first half, as I mentioned before. One of them got picked, one of them got dropped, and one of them got wiped off by a PI call again, if we want to sit here and have a long-form debate about, we can, but Purdue still has to get better at some of the things that they've not been so great at here, even when they've won during this Big Ten season. So, but Northwestern and Indiana are both games you ought to win. And at this point in the season, with all that's on the line right now, are games Purdue needs to win.
All right, Minnesota beat Northwestern today, 24-3. Indiana loses to Ohio State, 56-14. Both those teams played on the road today. And you're right. I couldn't agree more. You just got to hold serve. Don't give Northwestern anything easy. Pat Fitzgerald's teams, I think, at least when I was watching, continue to play hard. You just can't give anything to either one of those teams. If you do that, I think you have a good chance of winning. So,
and that's
all right, guys. Tom,
what's concerning is that some of the things you're struggling with are precisely the sorts of things that can breathe life into a team like Northwestern.
Yep.
If you throw picks,
right.
if you miss tackles, all of a sudden give up cheap touchdowns for teams that can't score, that's how you end up sweating bullets at the end of games you should win, relatively comfortably on paper anyway.
I think just watching the Ohio State with Northwestern game, I know in the weather, but that should get Purdue's attention in the first place. All right, guys, we'll let Tom get back to work and make that trip back to West Lafayette. Drive safely, and I think those beef house rolls will be waiting for you somehow on I-74. We'll try to work that out for you. But thanks again, gentlemen. Have a good rest of your Saturday evening. We thank all of you for watching or listening to this. We enjoyed doing it. I want to thank the Union Club Hotel. And, of course, a reminder, we've had a wonderful transition to the On3 network, and a lot of folks have come over. It's $1 for the first year. All you got to do is go to GoldandBlack.com and subscribe. We will make it worth your while. We promise. And we've been thrilled with the response.
There you go.
$1 US.
Props.
That's a US dollar. That's all we're asking.
Canadian.
And again, we're pleased with the early numbers, but you can still participate. If you can't find us, again, just go to GOLD, that's GoldandBlack.com, and do that. And of course, we also want to thank the Union Club Hotel, the Boiler Up Bar, the 811 Bistro. It'll be hopping next weekend for that senior day game and home season finale against the Northwestern Wildcats. Time TBA, we should know shortly. Probably by the time you listen or watch this, you'll know. But anyway, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week with our Saturday Simulcast after that Purdue Northwestern game.